Okay, good morning, everybody. As always, my name is Ginny Davis. I'm the principal Piedmont Hills. With me today, I have Yvonne Gunter, who is one of our social workers. Our topic today is radical acceptance. And I wanted to start with kind of giving you like how I first learned about radical acceptance. It was actually just about this time of year 2 years ago, the year that we were on distance learning. And as I've shared with parents before, though this may be new if you're new to us, maybe I don't know if I've shared it this year. I forget what I share. But when my daughter was finishing high school, she was going through a time of really severe depression and anxiety, and had a lot of stuff. And so we were in some pretty intensive therapy with her. And one of the things we did is we did family therapy, family DBT. DBT is dialectic behavior therapy. And so we did every week, it was Wednesday nights on Zoom, where we did this family therapy. And how they did it is they would put us in like different Zoom rooms, like you'd have the parents and then the teenagers would be in another room, and then they'd bring us all together at the end. And they taught us different skills. And it was about this time of year, and we did this for like a full year. This family therapy, but they taught us about this concept of radical acceptance. And as you can imagine, that time of my life, where my daughter is going through all this, it was the time where college applications were due. And she was like, I don't think I can go to college. I think I need to go to a junior college. With all of her depression, we were on distance learning. And so the school year was, I hate to say crap. I mean, it was just, it was really hard. Like, it was just the pandemic was happening, this was before the vaccine. So we were like, it was just a really difficult time. And the idea of radical acceptance, where you just accept that this is what it is. And you don't have to like it. That's, to me, the key. You don't have to like what's going on in your life. You just accept what's going on in your life and you stop fighting it. And I have to tell you that this was, for me personally, transformational, and my own personal happiness and my own mental health and well-being, to like this concept of you just accept it and you don't fight it. And like things, like once it clicked in for me, things just got easier. And as I'm sure I will share throughout today, like I've got a lot going on with my parents' health and like taking care of my mom, that I constantly am using this and reminding myself of these ideas of radical acceptance. It is, this is something that I wanted to share with all of you as parents, because, and like, hopefully, like, obviously you teach your teenagers about this, because this is an important skill for teenagers, but it's an important skill for all of us, and just our own personal mental health. I can't, this is my favorite topic that we're going to talk about this year. Today is my favorite day. This is like to me, like the most important topic. So I'm going to turn it over to Yvonne to kind of give us some background and some more information about radical acceptance.
Yes. And just like Ms. Davis described, I think of it, I liken it to drowning. When they say you're drowning and you're just continuing to try to swim and fight, and you keep sinking and keep sinking. And it's actually when you just kind of let your arms go and you float to the surface. I think of radical acceptance kind of like that. It doesn't mean that you like the reality. It doesn't mean that you agree with the reality. It doesn't mean that you're comfortable in that reality, but there are some things in life that we don't have a lot of control over, yet we dedicate a lot of our energy to that. A lot of that is with parenting. A lot of that is with our own families and our own parents. A lot of that can be within our relationships. I don't have control over how my husband thinks, feels, what he does. I don't. And so how I let that impact me emotionally, is totally dependent on myself and whether or not I can let things go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to check in with everyone. And I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you to hold on to this answer throughout this presentation. I think it's going to be really important. And the question is, what worries you today? What worries do you have? So just take a moment to figure out, what am I worried about? And it could be something small. It could be something big. It could be something life-altering. It could be, I'm worried about my parent. I'm worried about my kid. I'm worried about the score of a football game. Like whatever is the worry is, there's no limit on what you can use throughout this presentation. So just think about that for a minute. What is my worry today? I have this practice in the mornings of when I wake up, I'm very sensitive to anxiety in my stomach. So if there's something, my stomach feels a little off, got some butterflies in there, I will literally lay there and go through the list of things that are happening that day. And when I hit the one that really worries me, I feel like those butterflies in my stomach, and I know that's what it is. And so identifying what it is that worries me is really important, because that's when I can decide, is this something I have control over? Is this something I don't have control over? What do I do with it? So when talking about radical acceptance, many years ago, the Dalai Lama was interviewed on the topic of mindfulness and happiness. The question he was asked was, what has been your happiest moment in life? And his response was, this one. This strikes me because I don't know that I've ever felt that way about a moment. I think about, like, I have 3 sons, they're all teenagers now. I kind of think back of when they were young and cute, and I changed diapers and did the whole thing, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And I think about like that as being like my prime time in life, and I was so excited about it. And when I really think back to what I was feeling in those moments, it was stress. It was wishing that they would go down for a nap. It was not being able to wait till I can sit in a restaurant without them being like chaotic. It was looking forward to them being in school full time so I can have some time to myself. It was never that, I never felt that that was that moment until later on in life. So maybe you have some moments of like looking back and like, man, that was so cool. But if the reality of it was that you weren't really present in that moment, it wasn't really the height of your life, it just only feels that way now. I think about those times. I remember being exhausted and wishing my kids were more self-sufficient. I was not content where I was. And so I try to think about times in my life where I was actually super stoked to be in the moment that I was in. And I honestly can't think of one. I'm a little better at that now, but I just remember being zoned out. And it's weird to me that now when I think back about good times in my life, that was one of them. And it's kind of unfortunate that I didn't thoroughly enjoy that. When I first wrote this presentation out, it was 2020, I guess it was last year. My oldest was going to college, and it wasn't that big of a deal. He was moving to San Jose State, which he was still going to live on campus, and I was like devastated by it. And I remember dropping him off at San Jose State and driving home and just crying my eyes out. And I had all of these regrets of like, gosh, I remember that time when he just wanted to go to the park, but I was so tired and I just couldn't. And I'm so stupid. Why didn't I take him to the park? And now he's gone. And I just had all these like negative like criticisms of like the type of mom that I was, and just beating myself up for essentially being human, right? So I just had all these like thoughts of like, gosh, I could have, should have, would have. And so again, I don't know if there's been a time in my life where like the Dalai Lama, I felt like this is it. I think as humans, we're wired to find fault in things. Out of our insecurities, we find fault in the things that we do, the things we didn't do. It says true freedom is being without anxiety about imperfections, not without imperfections, but without the anxiety about having those, and just realizing that we do have faults, we do have weaknesses, we do have situations where maybe we didn't do the best thing we could have done. The acceptance of the fact that life is not perfect. The problem is that we spend so much time fighting the things that we have zero control over. So thinking about those things again, what was your worry today? What was it? Do you actually have control of it? So a little more onto what Ms. Davis said about radical acceptance. This actually does come from DBT, it's a form of therapy. And one of the main ideas is distress tolerance. We are uncomfortable feeling uncomfortable, right? We will do anything in our power to avoid feeling uncomfortable, right? So think about like when you are having a hard time. For me, I pick up my phone. I pick up my phone 100 times a day on the days when I'm feeling extra stressed, because I'm trying to avoid that feeling of being stressed, right? And so what radical acceptance and the idea of distress tolerance is trying to figure out ways to feel not comfortable, but to be okay to get through difficult situations. So it's a skill taught in DBT. DBT is a type of therapy that teaches people how to live in the moment, to develop healthy ways to cope with stress, ways to regulate our own emotions, and improve our relationships with others. It's a tool that can be helpful for people that have painful emotions, and being able to experience those painful emotions by accepting them fully and without judgment. This was developed in the 1980s. And one of the goals is really learning how to manage stress in a healthy way. The skills are helpful for situations where a client might not be in control of a situation, but they need to manage it. So radical acceptance rests on letting go of the illusion of control and a willingness to notice and accept things as they are right now without judging. Again, that's radical acceptance rests on letting go of the illusion of control and willingness to notice and accept things as they are right now without judging. And I love the fact that they say illusion, because that's what it is. We always have this illusion that we have control over when our kids go to bed, what their grades look like, who they interact with, the friends that they're picking, what they eat for dinner. We just have this sense of like needing to control that, when the reality is I can put my kid to bed in the room. Does that mean they're going to fall asleep? No. Yet I spend a lot of energy focusing on making sure my kids go to bed, right? So I want you to go back to that question of, what is it that's worrying you right now? And I should have answered that for myself. I'm trying to think. I'll let you go first, Jenny. What is it that's worrying you right now?
Oh my gosh, I have so many.
That's okay. We're going to divide them up into what you can control and what you can't.
I am worried about my mom's health. I am worried about my dad's state of well-being and accepting my mom's health. I am worried about my daughter and her anxiety as she goes into the last couple of weeks of the semester. I am, what else am I worried about? I'm worried about my dogs being too cold outside today. I'm mostly worried about them being outside in the rain tomorrow. I've got little things I'm worried about. I'm worried about the 49ers winning and like having a successful season. Not so much worried about that, but it is there.
No, yeah. And parents
come up with more things, but
no, totally. Parents, please put some things in the chat that you might be worried about, or things, even if you've worried about them in the past. Like, what are the things that come up for you? I always wonder, like, how many of them are actually about ourselves versus how many are about our children, our families. I would say right now, my biggest worry is my youngest grades. And it's kind of more of a selfish thing, because I'm like, oh my gosh, do I not get to go anywhere fun this summer because he's going to be in summer school? Honest. I'm worried about, gosh, yeah, he's my big worry right now, just like him in general. And so, did anybody share any worries yet? I'll wait. They're there. My assumption is a lot of them have to do with our kids. What are those general worries about your teenager? I'm worried my son is going to fall in love with the wrong person. I'm worried, Virginia, my student success in school, right? And remember, success can mean different things to different ones of us. I'm just wanting my kid to not fail. Some of us might want them to get better grades. Driving. That makes me sick to my stomach just thinking about it. I have one driver right now, one on the way driving, and I worry every time that somebody's going to run a red light and hit him, that he's going to do something dumb. Like, my big concern is his safety with recent events of shootings. We send our kids to school and we are hoping that they're going to be safe, but always as a parent, that's always in the back of our minds of their safety. Kids leaving home to college. Yes. Mine's back, by the way. They do come back sometimes. These are all legitimate worries.
I'll give you a little side note about and we'll talk about this at the end of the year. We have a topic where we talk about our kids, like the empty nest and like kids leaving for college and how you deal with it. Yvonne and I have both dealt with this. But I can tell you just a little side note, it's totally off topic, but I wanted to share this. because I've missed my daughter terribly. She's left for Sonoma and she's been gone all semester since August. But then she was home this past week for Thanksgiving, and it was lovely having her home. But at the same time, all of her stuff was all over the bathroom. Everyone can't get a Q-tip in the trash can of her life depended on it. And I was like, okay, this I did not miss. Like this stuff, like, oh, time for you to go away again.
Yeah. When they leave, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so terrible. But then again, that reality sets in of like, oh, that wasn't really the reality when she was here, that it was perfect, right? It's like one more mouth to feed, like one more worry to have, for sure. So thinking of all the worries, and we can go by one, or if you guys want to do it on your own, of just thinking about which of these things, and this is something that I always ask my clients. Like I literally have a circle of like things you can control versus things you can't control. And it's amazing how much energy we put into the things we can't control just because we can't help it. We're thinking about it. We can't sleep. We have all these worries. I think I worry too much about my kids ruining their futures with the mistakes they can make as youngsters. I constantly have to remind myself that I can only control so much. And that's also the way we learn and grow. 100%. Because it's like we're worrying about the things that they're not mature enough to even think about yet. So we're like one step ahead with the worries, and they're just like doing their thing and not realizing that a lot of the things they could do could impact them, whether it's school, whether it's crime, like whatever it is. So thinking back of like, or thinking of what you have control over. I think about my son and his grades. The thing I do have control over is being able to limit his video game time. I have some control over, helping him get organized. Like there's some things that I can do. I cannot control whether or not he cares. I've shared this before. My youngest son has told me multiple times. My other two were super easy. So it just made me think I was this fantastic parent who had kids bound for college, and it's because of me. And then number 3 came along, and that is not him at all. And so I realized like all our kids are different. I don't think it had anything to do with how I parented them. My kid wants to have a hotel for cats. And he basically tells me, why do I need to go to college if I'm going to scoot poop? And I don't know how to answer that. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like praying that he'll change his mind, because cats can stay home alone, but I haven't broke that to him yet. So just thinking about like, I don't have control over his desire to do his homework. I don't have control over whether or not he cares. And I think that's the biggest one, because I put so much energy into kind of micromanaging him, yet he still doesn't do it. So I have to figure out, like, do I just kind of fall back and let it happen and give him natural consequences? Because it's like literally giving me more gray hairs. So what about yours, Ginny? Control or not?
I think the stuff that I listed off as my worries right now, I have very little control over.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I had this because, I have radical acceptance on my mind right now, knowing that we were going to have this topic today. And I was thinking about it yesterday in terms of my dad. And I'm like, I need to teach my dad about radical acceptance, because I need and that's something I can control. And I did have a conversation with him yesterday afternoon and kind of explained like that it would be helpful if he could just accept it, because he's constantly wanting to like fix it, and like what can he control and what can he fix. And there's a lot of stuff about my mom's health that it just is, we can't fix it. Like we just have to accept it. Like we just have to accept her declining health, her declining mobility. She's not probably going to get back to the way she used to be. And like, it's not something we can fix. And because one thing that's, and so like, what can I control? Teaching him about this and talking to him about this is something that I can do. Whether or not he buys into it and like listens to me, I can't control that, but I can do that part. I think he did hear me a little bit yesterday. So because he's struggling so much with like just being angry and like emotional and just like about the situation, because it's completely changed his life, which sucks for him. I mean, it's terrible. And I see as his child, and like it's really hard. Like I know like all the parents here, we're all kind of the same age group. This is a really difficult, and nobody really talks about this like time of our lives where our kids are getting older and they're going away to college and they're like kind of leaving the nest, but then we start caring for our parents more. And this, like, I feel like I'm torn in both ways. And thank God for my husband, who is really taking over, with my son and his homework and stuff that I haven't, because I have no idea what is going on with my son in school. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know if he's doing his homework. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what he has for homework. I have no idea, because my husband has taken that over because I don't have the bandwidth to do both.
Totally.
And so that is something like what can I like control, like that, like me, like letting go of like, I can't help Nathan right now with his homework. Paul can do that. That's something I had control over.
Totally. And that kind of leads me into like the emotions of what's happening, right? So another way to define radical acceptance is the basic idea is to view the tough situations that we're experiencing, acknowledge the emotions that they bring up, and accept those emotions, not deny them, right? So for you, it brings up frustration, it brings up anxiety, it brings up, for me with my son, it brings up frustration, it brings up anger, it brings up just, frustration. Like similar to you, I don't even know what he's doing in his classes. I actually called our assistant principal yesterday and I was like, can you just check on my kid's stuff? Because I'm shutting down. Like I can't do it. It's too much.
When you're talking about emotions, there's like sadness too, right? With you and your son, like you're like, because you have this image I think it's so hard with our kids. Like we have, like when they're growing up, you have this image of like, this is the way they're going to be. And when their reality diverges from what we had kind of expected, like there's some grieving and sadness with that as parents of like letting go of this idea that we had. I definitely experienced that with my daughter. Like I had this like image in my mind of like where she was going to go to, I don't remember where she was going to go, but like what her future was going to be like. And it was sad for me. Like I definitely had some grieving that I had to go through.
And I think kind of like what Virginia said, I think it's for me, it's like he's totally ruining the opportunities that he has to do something better later. And he's of course not thinking that, because he's thinking like, I'm having fun right now, I'm doing these things. And it's like my sadness of like, man, you're making your life so much harder than it needs to be just based on not caring. And I can't make you care. And I'm like mad about it and sad about it. And I wish better for you. We all want better for our kids than we had for ourselves. And it's like, he just doesn't care. Virginia, I don't know if you have anything as far as your control versus not control. I pick on you just because I miss you. Is she there? No, that's okay. And I kind of like what you said about this too. Most of our unnecessary suffering is due to our expectations. So most suffering comes from expectations that don't come true. What are your expectations for yourself? And what are your expectations for your kids? I'm supposed to work and then go home and cook dinner and have a smile on my face and spend quality time with my kids and have energy and then work out. What actually happens is I go home, I take a nap, and I DoorDash. And so I'm beating myself up constantly. What was that? I'm beating myself up constantly of like, man, my mom did all these things. My mom was able to do this. And my dad said something the other day, like, they don't make women like they used to, or something to that effect, because I was complaining about like not wanting to cook and clean and all these things. And it's like, I know, I was like, wow, thanks. But I'm like, yeah, but mom also, I've said this before, had a heart attack at 40 because of stress, right? And I have a little bit better boundaries for myself, but I do still feel like sometimes a disappointment as a mom, right? Because I have those expectations of myself that I'm supposed to do all these things. So for all of you, what are those things that you are expecting of yourself? Throw some in the chat. What do you expect yourself to do? How do you expect yourself to feel?
Personally, one thing I'm struggling with right now, and this is just very real this week, is, I've been this is the second year, like where since we came back from the pandemic, where I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I work out. But I'm so tired right now. Like I'm so, and like every morning it's becoming more and more of a struggle. Then I'm like really like, is it worth it? Is it, what happens if I just sleep in? Like what if I don't work out every day? Will it be okay? But I have this like, and this is me like with my control issues, like with myself, because I have established this routine and I have like worked out regularly for over 2 years now, that I am so fearful of sliding back to where I hardly ever worked out. And I like, because I lost like 30 pounds and I'm so fearful of backsliding and going, and that I'm like, I'm struggling with the balance right now. And like, like, where can I like ease up and allow myself rest that I desperately need and still like not lose everything. I'm yeah.
That's a hard one because it's like, yeah, you want to maintain healthy habits, but you also want to listen to your body when it's tired. So it's like, what's the right decision, I guess? And maybe it's like, where do we get those expectations for ourselves? I think for you, it's like, okay, I feel good. I've lost weight. I got to keep doing this. But then at the same time, it's like, am I acknowledging that with everything going on, my body just might need more rest? Yeah. Right. That's a tough one. So what are those expectations? Where did they come from? My parents, clearly my dad who says those things. There is an expectation that I should sacrifice my own well-being for my family, always. And I think I'm very notorious for like going on vacations without my kids and taking time with my friends and really doing a lot of self-care. And I've gotten a lot of grief about it from my parents of like, when I was your age and I had family, I was home making dinner no matter what time I got home. And I don't want to like be mean, but I also want to tell my mom, but like you were in a bad mood all the time. When you would come home, we were all like worried and scared, right? I don't want that for myself, for my family. And so, but still those things are kind of ingrained in me of like, I have to be this way. I have to function this way. I have to sacrifice everything and be this like shell of a person because I gave it all to my family. And like, I don't really want that for myself. So I think it's important to notice, like, is this the way you were brought up to have these expectations for yourself? And then how many of those expectations are you imparting on your kids? Are my kids supposed to be motivated? Are my kids supposed to be this? Honestly, when I was 14 years old, I really wasn't thinking about my future in college. And so we almost like ridicule or criticize our kids when they don't. I was literally collecting ladybugs and playing with my friends and riding my bike and roller skating. Like, why is it so different now? And I think it's that worry of them ruining their future. It's like that constant, like, we're not okay just being right where we are. We're always in the future and what we're doing and what they need to do. And so thinking about like, what are the things that you put on your kids? What are the expectations on your kids? Mine is to like be able to be independent and move out and go to college and get a good job. I want them to have a job that pays the bills that they actually like. Like that's my expectation for them. And when they're doing things that kids do, and I feel like they're off track, I start to get that like feeling of like panic and loss of control. But I have to sometimes just accept the fact that they're teenagers. They do stupid things. We all did. And that's where they are right now. And I don't have a whole lot of control over it.
Sometimes it's not even that they're doing stupid things. It's just that I feel like sometimes it's easier as a parent to swoop in and just fix something. Like right now, my daughter is not able to register for her classes for next semester because, and she was a transfer student, so she never submitted her high school transcript. She only submitted her transcript from the junior college. Sonoma State admitted her, but now they're like, oh, we need the high school transcript. and you can't register for your classes for next semester. So she took care of that and did that, but like there's still the hold, and like so this hasn't been cleared up, and she's like panicking about it. And I swear yesterday I had this, like, it went across my mind that like, God, I should just drive up there and like deal with this. Like I need to like storm into that office and be like, come on, like, you know, because like I know as an adult,
Don't you dare.
like things moving. And then I had to like stop myself and be like, God, she's in college, you know, she can take, she's an adult, she can take care of this. Like I can give her advice and be like, hey, because I told her, like, she's like, well, the lady won't email me back. And I'm like, I think you need to go over there in person. And, you know, so, but like, I definitely had this instinct of like wanting to swoop in and fix it for her. And I think as parents, a lot of times we want to do that. We want to, and I think it's hard. And this, you know, going back to our topic of radical acceptance, it is very difficult for our, as a parent, to sit back and watch our kids like not do things the way that we think we should, even if they're not screwing up. Like my daughter's not screwing anything up. Like it's, but like, it's kind of like, you could fix this better. Like you could be doing this situation better. And just kind of letting her flounder a little bit, it's difficult. Like it's really difficult to like sit back and watch that.
Totally. I think we did a whole book on that of like basically like letting your kids fail.
Yes.
And we don't do that. Our kids forget their lunch on the counter and we bring it down to school because we're worried they're going to be hungry instead of letting them learn that natural consequence. Hard not to do. You want your best for the best for your kids, but then at the same time we do that, we're also worried, oh my gosh, they're not ready to be adults, they're not ready to be independent. My kid going off to college just for that 1 year, he came back a completely different person who, you know, advocates for himself and takes care of things and pays his bills, and it's been so cool to see. But it wouldn't have happened without me kind of stepping back a little bit, which was a really, really hard thing to do. And I had to accept that like he's growing up, it's time for him to experience these things. And it's actually been really cool to see. Going back to like what the expectations for us were, I was kind of thinking about like what my expectations for myself are and why. And so I think my mom is a caretaker. She literally like takes care of people, like elderly people who, you know, are ill. Our family owned a care home that took care of veterans who were very ill. And so literally like my entire childhood was about helping people, helping others. This idea for me has caused me to like lose a lot of sleep. I always am like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I say yes to help people, even if that means sacrificing sleep for me. When I go home, I know I need a few minutes to myself, but I feel guilty that I'm not engaging with my kids or helping them. There's so many like shoulds. I should be spending more time with my kids. I should be answering the calls when my friends call, even though I'm too tired to like hear anything about what's going on with them. I should be a better wife. I should make healthier dinners. I should do all these things. And of course I can't, right? Like I should see my clients more often than I can. You know, the other social worker and I have about 200 students right now that we're working with. And we're like, both of us are like, man, I wish I could see them more. I wish I had more time. I should be doing this and should be doing that. And it just sets us up for feeling like a failure. The other thing that I think we expect of ourselves is, I think I was brought up to believe that I should always feel happy and not acknowledging that emotions fluctuate. Right? It's okay to not be happy all the time. It's okay if our kids are a little bit down. That's okay. That's like a natural part of life. So just acknowledging that like life brings about challenges, they happen, and that's okay. That we don't have to like fight to fix them all the time. Sometimes it just, you know, requires some extra time and space. As humans, we don't like to feel uncomfortable. We're designed to avoid pain and discomfort. Just like we pull our hand away from a hot stove, we tend to respond the same way with emotions. But some of our current realities are uncomfortable. It helps us, radical acceptance helps us not make an already uncomfortable, painful situation worse. It allows us to ride the wave of discomfort without creating more waves. Then this whole part here was about the pandemic and what we didn't have control over. And that was tough, still tough, but definitely feels like things are a little bit closer to normal. Let's see. Why is it important to accept reality? Number one is that rejecting a reality doesn't change our reality. And I think that's part of like our avoidance patterns and our avoidance behaviors of like, if I don't think about it, if I don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. Changing reality requires first accepting reality. And that's something that a lot of us cannot do. I never thought of myself as like a control freak. My husband says it all the time. And I'm like, no, it's not. But then when I think about it from this perspective of like wanting to fix everything and make sure everything's okay for everybody else, I kind of am. Pain cannot be avoided. It's nature's way of signaling that something is wrong. So just knowing and acknowledging that like things are going to be painful. And that's okay. It's not fun. We're not happy about it. I acknowledge the emotions of the things happening, but there's nothing I can do. Rejecting reality turns pain into suffering. So pain is inevitable. Suffering is not. And what suffering is essentially is pain plus denial equals suffering. So pain is pain, it's going to be there. But when we deny it, that's when it leads to that longer term suffering. So is there anything that you're feeling is painful, but that denial makes it a little bit worse? Think about it like that. Refusing to accept reality keeps us stuck in that mental state of just being unhappy, bitter, angry, sad, guilty, embarrassed, all those feelings. So accepting reality, it's beneficial for us to accept it so that we're not harboring all of those feelings. The path out of hell is through misery. By refusing to accept the misery that is part of climbing out of the hell, you fall back in. Our brain likes to mush together all the things we have control over and the things that we don't have control over. So again, I want to just kind of think about the things that we can control versus what we can't control. So Ginny, in like your situation right now, I know that there's some things you can control and some things you can't. In the situation with like mom, for instance, what did you have control over? Were there any components of it that you were able to control?
So I had control over finding her like in-home help and care for her. I, go over there every night. I put her to bed. So there's things that I do that like I make sure where I can make sure she's as comfortable as possible. That's what I had control over. Like, and making just recently we just did the paperwork where I now have power of attorney for my parents so that like I'm the decision maker for them. So doing that and like getting that done, was helpful so that so that I did have like what I can control, I have the power to do that. But I can't make her better. I can encourage her to do her physical therapy so that hopefully she improves a little bit, but I can't just snap my fingers and my mom be better now.
Yeah.
It's not.
I wish. And you can control how dad feels about it. Right?
Exactly.
And same with like our kids in school. It's like we have control over not letting them play video games. We have control over, talking to them about it. But at the end of the day, we really do not have any control over what they do. So when you think about those like stressful situations or the ones that you worry about the most, the question here is, what is your response to those situations? Is it a acceptance type of response or is it an action type of response? Right. And so like with my son, I think right now I'm in the like denial, like I'm not doing either. I'm just kind of like frozen in it. But I think I was feeling much worse when I was really trying to like have my hand in it and do everything. We were fighting all the time. He was like mad at me. I can't, like I literally can't. And so my response to the situation, which was to be extra like hovering and nagging, was detrimental to me and myself, and it didn't change anything. Like if I was like micromanaging him and then his grades went to A's, like that's different. But it was just like he resented me, his grades stayed the same, and I felt stressed out all the time. So acknowledging that, like that doesn't mean that I'm okay with him not caring and not getting good grades. It just means that I don't really have much else I can contribute to that situation without causing both of us more harm. Right. If we can, we should take action and handle business, like it sounds like you did in certain situations. But if we can't, we have to accept them. We have to find silver linings, and we might really have to think about it. So like in all of our situations that we're talking about, what are some silver linings, right? There might be the like this person said, like fear that my kid's driving, the silver lining is that they can get you groceries, right? Run errands. I have my kid go fill my big 5-gallon water thing, he's independent, he's growing up. I think that's amazing. So those are the silver linings. Yes, I'm still freaked out about it, and yes, I worry every time he leaves, and but there are some silver linings about that. Some harder ones that don't really have silver linings, right? Like the one about the recent events of shootings. Like there's not a silver lining on that. It is the reality. How often it happens, I don't know. So maybe looking into like the data on it of how likely it is, but it doesn't change the fact that it's really scary and worrisome. But we can have our kids, we can make sure that they're aware of those safety protocols and things to do to keep themselves safe. Like we have control over those things, but we don't have control over other people's behaviors. So accept what is, acknowledge reality, determine what we can control and what we cannot control. That's like the biggest one. Like literally in most sessions that I do with students, we are determining, okay, I hear all these worries that you're bringing. Now let's divide them up so that we know where to focus our energy, because you only have limited energy during the day. And if we're focusing only on things that you can't control, not super helpful. Look at the situation from a non-judgmental perspective. Stick to the facts. So when I say like non-judgmental, it's usually about ourselves, judging ourselves so hard for not getting up and working out, right? For not cooking dinner, for not being in a good mood when our kids are around. That's like my thing is like, I have to have 30 minutes a day where nobody's bothering me and I'm in my room, period. Like I just don't function well if I don't have that. And I feel bad about it, but it's like, no, I'm noticing that like when I do that, I'm in a better mood for the rest of the evening. So I just know that I owe that to myself. I owe that to my family. So figuring out for you, what are those things? How can I be more non-judgmental to myself? Acknowledging where those expectations came from. Maybe they came from your grandparents. Maybe they came from your friends. Maybe they come from your peers. And these are also strategies that I want us to, instill in our kids. Tough things happen, and how we respond to them, our kids watch us. If I respond to every tough situation by being in a bad mood and yelling and screaming, that's what I'm really literally teaching my kiddo to do. So how can I do that in a healthier way? Stop fighting and denying reality. Learn how to live in the present moment despite the pain. And people talk a lot about mindfulness, and really what that means is like what the Dalai Lama said, of like living in that moment, being content where you are. Doesn't mean everything's perfect, but it means this is where I am right now. This is, the best moment. I'm in it, enjoy it, because you will miss out, just like with my kids being little and, thinking back at how wonderful of a time that was. And then realizing that like, man, I was so crabby all the time and I was tired, and I was just praying that they would go down for a nap, and then realizing that I missed out on a lot. So.
Yeah, I think that's really important with the acceptance. And again, like you don't have to like the situation. Like with my mom, I do not like that she's spent the past year having really severe health issues. I don't like that, like we're really looking at the end of her life. But the silver linings, I'm spending more time with her than I was before. Every Saturday morning we watch the Great British Baking Show together. Like there's just, so I'm kind of trying to cherish those times, like where and even my dad drives me nuts, but I'm spending more time with him. Like I'm way, that's the silver lining.
Yeah. It's almost like things come full circle. It's like they care for you and then you're caring for them, and it kind of all comes together, and it's just sucks. It's hard. It's sad. But you're doing it. You're doing it. And just like all of us, it's like whatever that is for you, acknowledging that. Try that practice in the morning of like, okay, what's worrying me today? Because it's always going to be something. I mean, if you don't have any worries in the morning, talk to me because I want to know what your secret is. But I think all of us have something that's on our mind, something big that's on our plate. And I think it's important to just like really be in tune with our bodies and with ourselves of like, how am I doing right now? You know, how am I doing? How am I functioning? And how can I do this better? And how can I model this for my kiddo? So that is what I have for radical acceptance.
Yeah.
A couple of things, a couple affirmations that can be good. I can get through this even if it's hard. I'm imperfect and that's okay. I'm enough. I can create a new path even if this one feels bad. I have endured difficult experiences before and it was okay. So like in closing, I just want us to practice that positive self-talk for ourselves, encouraging ourselves. Treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. If we did that, like think about when your friend's going through a hard time and doesn't want to work out in the morning, like what you might say versus what you say to yourself. Right. So think about yourself as like someone that you also have to take care of. So,
yeah. Well, thank you. Hopefully, parents, you got some nuggets out of this talk today, and some things to think about. Like I said, this was the radical acceptance. It's not something that like immediately like, oh, I get it. Like that's why I want to keep talking about this, but it seriously really helped me. It was very, very helpful at a time where like things were overwhelming. It made just like once I like got it and like thought about this and put like a different frame on everything that was happening in my life, it just made everything manageable. And that's, sometimes you have periods of your life that are really, really hard. Like there's ups and downs and some periods are really tough. And so this is something that like, it doesn't fix it, but it helps you accept it.
Find those silver linings of where your kids are right now. That might be hard to do for some of us.
Yeah.
But they're there,
Yeah. Silver lining of your kids leaving home for college is you don't have Q-tips on your bathroom floor, at least for me. Which is,
and when you buy snacks at Costco, they're still there like the day later.
I have not reached that point because my son is reaching the teenage, like eats everything and needs like 15 meals a day. And I'm like, wow, he eats a lot.
Yep.
Okay, everybody. Thank you. Have a wonderful week. Next week, we are going back to our talks and like our electives. Ms. Pereira, the head of the business department, is going to be with us next week. So that should be a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful week. Stay warm tomorrow. Stay dry. We're going to get a lot of rain, so stay dry tomorrow. Okay, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, Principal.
Bye.
Hi, Principal.
Hi, yes. You have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a quick question that